Good evening, everyone. Welcome to Diksha e-learning. Today, we are going to present to you a webinar on the topic Introduction to Fracture and its Management, conducted by Dr. Giku Elias Benny, organized by Diksha e-learning. Dr. Giku Elias Benny is a chief consultant at Vettukatil Ayurveda Hospital, Muvattupuzha, Ernakulam. He completed his BAMS in 2011 from Government Ayurveda Medical College, Tripunithura, PG in the Department of Shalya Tantra from Tripunithura Government Ayurveda Medical College in 2015. He specialized in orthopedic and anorectal cases.
Quoting Aristotle, educating the mind without educating the heart is no education at all. With that, it is my great pleasure to invite Dr. Giku Elias Benny to this webinar. Before starting the session, I would like to go through a few of the basic instructions to be followed throughout the session. For uninterrupted class session, use laptop with high-speed internet connection. Please make sure your microphone is on mute to have a disturbance-free session. In case of any disruption, please check your internet connection first, and if the problem is within our network connection, kindly raise the issue in the chat box. Filling your full name to be displayed is appreciated. Any questions can be raised in the chat box. Questions raised in the chat box will be cleared at the end of the session. Now, I would like to hand over the session to Sir. Over to you, sir. Sir, over to you.
Yeah, 1 second, sir.
Is it audible?
Yes, sir.
Good evening all. Thank you. Thank you for the introduction. Thank you for the opportunity. Okay, let's start this class, Introduction to Fracture. Okay, let's start this session. Regarding basic classification of fracture, orthopedic conditions are generally divided into two, traumatic and non-traumatic. Basically, traumatic means hot orthopedics regarding injury management, which we would like to learn well because of the importance of topic. But in OPD setting of one orthopedic OPD setting, most of the cases coming to OPD are non-traumatic or cold orthopedic cases. If we divide the conditions, total pathological conditions or non-traumatic condition consists of total 70%, and this traumatic condition consists of 25 to 30% in almost all OPDs. But we should learn to manage fracture, then only we get non-traumatic cases also. If we are practicing orthopedics, we would learn mostly fracture management and also pathological management. I already explained the basic difference, hot orthopedics and cold orthopedics, and in acute trauma setting, traumatic, we can classify it into sports injury, RTA, and valgus stress injury, and this includes pathological conditions. Today, let's discuss about fracture management, basic orthopedics, fracture management, and how to diagnose a fracture with clinical examination, radiological investigation, and higher or newer imaging techniques and relevant lab investigations. It is only needed in pathological fractures. In pathological fractures, to diagnose the condition, we should rely on lab investigations. And the line of management is divided into conservative and surgical, and our area is conservative management. In some conditions, for example, if there is a forearm fracture, that means fracture of radius and ulna. Today, I met a condition of the same in OPD, but the child's age was 13. So that case was managed with conservative management. If the patient's age is above 18, then that patient should be referred to an orthopedic surgeon for surgical management. About prognosis, the knowledge of prognosis is very important in the management of fracture. Basically, some other conditions like avulsion fracture of medial malleolus due to the pull of medial collateral ligament of ankle. That condition requires surgical management. It is not possible to manage. But last Friday, I met with a case of avulsion fracture of greater tuberosity due to the pull of supraspinatus muscle. That case is possible to manage with conservative management with aeroplane splintage. Aeroplane splintage means the shoulder should be abducted to 90 degree and then immobilization is done in this particular position for the union of greater tuberosity. Such knowledge regarding prognosis is very important. If there is avulsion fracture of patella due to the pull of quadriceps tendon, in that condition also that patient should be referred to surgical management. So, in which all cases a reference is needed and which all cases we can manage and also how to manage. In this class, I would like to convey this knowledge. Regarding fracture, all of us know the definition of fracture. It's a break in the continuity of bone and it may be complete or incomplete. This is very important. The clinical features of fracture. Susruta Acharya explains Shoyadu Bahulyam, Spandana Vartana Sparsha Sahishnattam, Avapityamane Shabdam, Srastangada, Vivida Vedana Pradurbhava, Sarvasu Avastasu Na Sharmalabha. And these clinical features, this Shoyadu Bahulyam, why this Shoyadu Bahulyam occurs? It is due to the blood pooling occurred due to that particular fracture. Actually, bone is a highly vascular structure and the break of that particular bone, it causes hematoma formation. That hematoma formation is the reason for Shoyadu Bahulyam. When compared to a tendon injury or ligament injury, bone is highly vascular and there will be Shoyadu Bahulyam. The difference in between grade 1 or grade 2 lateral collateral ligament injury and distal end of fibula fracture, we can easily differentiate it with the difference in swelling itself. There will be enormous swelling in fracture due to this highly vascularization of bone. And due to that, Shoyadu Bahulyam occurs. And this Shoyadu Bahulyam, due to this hematoma formation formed just after the fracture, helps us in two ways. One is it acts as a temporary splint, and second thing, it helps in the cellular proliferation and then in the callus formation. So this hematoma helps us in the healing of fracture and also it acts as a temporary splint. In open fractures where hematoma is lost, in such conditions, there will be delayed healing and there is a chance of infection also. So this I explained the reason of Shoyadu Bahulyam and the hematoma formation, the importance of hematoma formation in a fracture. I am explaining about it. And so the next point is important. So due to this hematoma formation, there will be Pitta Rakta Koba. There will be Pitta Rakta Koba in all injuries. In all injuries, immediately after the injury, there will be Pitta Rakta Koba, so that we should not do hot application immediately after a fracture or immediately after an injury. This is the most important point we should keep in mind regarding trauma setting. In Susruta Chikilsa Sthana, Bhakna Chikilsa, 3rd chapter, Acharya Susruta explains a lot of Shida Prayoga, Manjishtadi Pralebanam, and Negrodadi Shida Dara. All Shida Prayogas are explained immediately after the fracture in the beginning to reduce the Pitta Rakta Koba formed immediately after that particular injury. So this is very important. And also regarding splints, Madhugodambara Ashwatha, Palasha Kagubatoja, the splint explained by Acharya Susruta are also of Shida Virya, and the Shida Virya is explained immediately after the injury to pacify the Pitta Rakta Koba. And Acharya Dellana explains Pagadi Pariharartham, Sandanartham, Shida Prayogam is advised. So, immediately after an injury, if it's a fracture or ligament injury or tendon injury or any injury, immediately after an injury, we should go for Shida Prayoga. Do not go for Ushna Prayoga. Coming to next clinical features, all the clinical features explained by Acharya Susruta is explained in modern orthopedics also. Both are same. This Abhipitiyamana Shabdam is crepitus or grating sensation. And so that either you learn the sloga explained by Acharya Susruta or you learn the clinical features explained in modern orthopedics, so that with these clinical features and basic clinical examination. Basic clinical examination means look, feel, and move. Look means inspection, feel means palpation, and move means assessing range of motion. That means it's actually darshana, sparshana, and prasna. With the basic clinical examination and the knowledge of clinical features, we can come to a provisional diagnosis before advising or prescribing X-ray. This is very important. If we practice for a period of 1 year or up to 3 years, before taking X-ray, we can tell whether there is fracture or not. So to learn that particular thing, we should go with a systematic approach. You should learn the clinical features of Acharya Susruta or modern orthopedics. Both are same. The second thing is we should do systematic clinical examination with inspection, palpation, and range of motion. And with this particular assessment, after provisional diagnosis, then go for X-ray prescription. Okay. Coming to the diagnosis of fracture, this is very important. Coming to the diagnosis of fracture, the most important points are local bony tenderness and local bony irregularity. This is the most important clinical feature before prescribing X-ray, local bony tenderness and local bony irregularity. I will explain another clinical examination test to know whether there is fracture or not. Coming to the special test of diagnosis of fracture, it includes if we are suspecting fracture of humerus or femur, then we can do rotation at the distal end. Please note, if we are suspecting a fracture at humerus or femur in the proximal bones, that means proximal means near to heart and distal means away from heart. Proximal means near to heart and distal means away from heart. And if we are suspecting the fracture of proximal bones of limb, that is femur and humerus, we can do the rotation at the distal end, and with one hand you should do the rotation and with other hand you should palpate most proximal part of bone. Hope you understood the test. With one hand you should rotate the particular limb and with one hand you should feel the proximal end of that particular bone. Then if there is loss of transmission of movements, then we can assess there is fracture in humerus or femur. In a particular setting, that means in neck of femur fracture, it's not possible to assess the condition with this particular rotation, but in all other conditions, we can go with this particular clinical examination. And in neck of femur fracture, surely there will be external rotation of the affected limb and the patient is not able to attempt any movements and there will be shortening also. I repeat, in neck of femur fracture, which is very common in old age due to a very small injury, that particular neck of femur fracture, the patient's affected limb is externally rotated. There will be shortening up to 2 centimeters and the patient is not able to attempt any movements. In a very rare condition, that means in all neck of femur fracture, 1 in 20 cases, there is a chance of impacted fracture. 1 in 20 case of neck of femur fracture, there is a chance of impacted fracture. In impacted fracture means the distal end is pushed into the proximal end. Proximal, please remember, near to heart. Distal means away from heart. The distal end is pushed into the proximal part. That particular fracture is called impacted fracture or Majjanugata Bhagna. In that particular injury, the patient is able to bear weight. The patient is able to do the movements, but there will be external rotation. This is regarding rotation, clinical examination to find out the fracture of proximal bonds of limbs. Then the next one is springing. Springing is mainly done in the area of two bonds. That means in radius and ulna and tibia and fibula. If we are suspecting a Colles fracture, hope all of you know Colles fracture. Colles fracture is a fracture at the distal end of radius within 2.5 centimeter from the wrist joint with a characteristic deformity called Dinner-Four deformity, and the distal fragment is displaced posteriorly and laterally. This is Colles fracture. And if we are suspecting a Colles fracture, surely in Colles fracture there will be a deformity called Dinner-Four deformity. In that Dinner-Four deformity, with the inspection, in the inspection itself, the history is fall on an outstretched hand, and in inspection itself, we can come to a conclusion of Colles fracture. And if we are suspecting a Colles fracture, then it is at the distal end of radius. You should do springing or squeezing at the proximal end. Springing means actually squeezing. If there is fracture at the distal end, you should squeeze on the proximal end. Then there will be pain at the fracture site. If we are suspecting a neck of radius fracture, and if we are suspecting a head of radius fracture mainly it may be an occult fracture. Occult fracture means clinically we can diagnose fracture, but radiologically there won't be any sign. In that particular condition, we go for Sales sign. It's discussed in elbow radiology. That means anterior fat pad sign. In elbow radiology, we discuss about it. Actually, if there is fracture at the head of the radius, we should do squeezing at the distal end. If we squeeze on the distal end, there will be pain at the proximal end. Likewise, we can diagnose. This is springing test. If we are suspecting a distal end tibia fracture, we can do squeezing at the proximal end. Likewise, this is springing test. Springing test is actually explained in area of radius and ulna, tibia and fibula, but we can do springing test in almost all conditions. In all fracture suspecting conditions, we can do this particular clinical examination test. And this traction is done at the distal end. If we are suspecting fracture of metacarpal and metatarsal or a fracture in toe or phalanx, then we can do traction test. In traction test, if we are pulling axially, there will be pain on the fracture site if there is fracture at the distal end of limbs. This is regarding the special clinical examination test for diagnosis of fracture. Hope you understood the clinical examination. If there is any doubt, you can use the chat option. Coming to history. History is very important in clinical examination of this particular trauma. That means if a patient had a history of fall on an outstretched hand, that means if the patient falls like this, fall on an outstretched hand like this, the patient come to OPD with this history, fall on an outstretched hand, we can suspect fracture in particular areas. One is fracture of scaphoid. Second one is fracture of distal end of radius, mainly Colles fracture. If an old lady above 40 years of age fall on an outstretched hand, the most commonest condition is Colles fracture. And there will be a chance of fracture. I am explaining about fall on an outstretched hand. In such conditions, there is a chance of fracture at the neck of radius or head of radius. And also there is a chance of posterior dislocation of elbow. If a patient with age 45 and 55, male patient, fall on an outstretched hand, then there is a more chance of posterior elbow dislocation, which is possible to manage easily with conservative line of management. Then another condition is supracondylar fracture of humerus, which is very common in children, because that particular area is weak in a child. So that if a child fall on an outstretched hand, then there is a chance of supracondylar fracture of humerus. Then this fall on an outstretched hand may also cause neck of humerus fracture, anterior dislocation of shoulder, fracture at the junction of medial 2/3 and lateral 1/3 of clavicle. These points should be kept in mind regarding history of injury. Then another history, that means if a patient had a history of a blow to the back, then there is a chance of anterior shoulder dislocation. A blow from front, then there is a chance of posterior shoulder dislocation. And the posterior shoulder dislocation is very common in patients who had a history of electric shock or epileptiform convulsion. So this history is very important in OPD setting. History means we should know the mechanism of injury, how much energy was there, whether it was a high energy trauma or a trivial force. So to know this, if the fracture is due to a trivial force, then there may be a chance of pathological fracture and it should be ruled out. Otherwise, there may be a chance of recurrence. If the patient is able to bear weight, if it's a weight-bearing joint, this is important regarding whether we should need to prescribe X-ray if it's an ankle fracture or knee fracture. It's a rule called Ottawa rule, Ottawa knee rule and Ottawa ankle rule to check whether X-ray should be prescribed or not in this particular orthopedic condition, trauma condition. To know that if the patient is able to bear weight, if it's a weight-bearing joint. The next thing is if the patient is possible to do the movements, if it's an upper limb, that particular joint or that particular limb is possible to move if it's an upper limb. Whether symptoms improving or not, and any red flag signs. Red flag signs means in supracondylar fracture of humerus, I explained regarding fall on an outstretched hand, there is a chance of supracondylar fracture of humerus if it's a child. And if there is displacement of posterior, if the distal fragment is displaced posteriorly, if the displacement is more due to the injury from proximal fragment, there is a chance of brachial artery injury. The injury may occur over this particular area if there is posterior displacement of the distal fragment. Then due to that posterior displacement, the proximal fragment moves anteriorly and that particular fracture part may injure brachial artery, and this brachial artery injury causes lack of blood supply to the flexor group of forearm muscles. If the flexor group of forearm muscles are affected, then the patient goes to this particular attitude. That means this particular attitude is called Workman's ischemic contracture. It means the patient is not able to extend or dorsiflex his wrist like this due to the lack of blood supply to the forearm muscles, flexor group of forearm muscles. It may occur in supracondylar fracture of humerus, and to check whether there is impairment to blood supply, we are checking the distal end pulse. We are checking the distal end pulse, the radial pulse. And if the radial pulse is affected, then that particular patient should be immediately referred to a good orthopedic center. And in that particular center has a facility to do vascular surgery also. This is regarding red flag signs. I explained about one example. This particular condition may occur in supracondylar fracture of femur also. Coming to inspection, inspection means actually it's look. We are checking about swelling, bruising or contusion, abrasion, laceration and deformity. This deformity we can pick it very easily if it's a fracture of clavicle at the junction of medial 2/3 and lateral 1/3. If clavicle or shoulder is affected, the first thing to do is undress the patient up to waist. In the inspection itself, by comparing to the normal side, we can easily diagnose the fracture at the junction of medial 2/3 and lateral 1/3, which is very common. Please note, the first thing to keep in mind regarding orthopedic setting is history taking, how the injury happened. The second thing is checking the attitude. Attitude means how the patient presents. How the patient presents means in anterior shoulder dislocation, patient come to OPD with the affected hand supported with the opposite hand. In posterior dislocation of elbow, patient come to OPD like the same attitude, the affected hand is supported with opposite hand. With the inspection itself, if there is posterior dislocation of elbow, then the olecranon process is posteriorly displaced. In the inspection itself, we can come to the provisional diagnosis. So, first thing is history, how the injury occurred. Second thing is attitude, how the patient presents. And the third thing is the clinical examination, look, feel, and move. And then radiological investigation gives the confirmation of diagnosis. With these four things, we can come to clinical diagnosis and radiological diagnosis. So in inspection, we are checking whether there is swelling, enormous swelling, Schroeder bahulyam. And then the second thing, the most important thing is deformity. There will be bruising or contusion over the soft tissue. Here you can see this is a fracture of the base or proximal end of fifth metatarsal, and this particular fracture is known as Jones fracture. Jones fracture, very common injury. This particular fracture is at the junction, at the proximal end or at the base of fifth metatarsal, Jones fracture, which is very easily possible to diagnose with clinical examination itself, and also it's possible to manage conservatively. Coming to the second clinical examination, feel, that is palpation. It should begin from distal end to proximal end. And then palpate bone from another direction to rule out soft tissue injury. This is a tool to differentiate soft tissue injury and fracture. I will explain once more. We can differentiate whether it's a soft tissue injury or fracture in two ways. The first way is to check whether there is bony tenderness, and if we are checking bony tenderness, if we elicited a particular point of tenderness, then the bone should be palpated from another direction to check whether there is actual fracture or a soft tissue injury. This is one thing. And the second thing, we can differentiate this particular condition with the help of springing test. Springing test will be positive only in fracture condition. Why? Because we are palpating the proximal end and distal end of that particular bone. In soft tissue injury, springing test or squeezing test, hope you remember the test. If we are suspecting a Colles fracture at the distal end of radius, we are squeezing at the proximal end of radius and ulna like this. This squeezing or springing test will be positive only in fracture. To differentiate whether there is a soft tissue injury or fracture, we can do two things. One is palpate bone from another direction, and second thing is springing test or squeezing test. Hope you understood the clinical examination. Next is range of motion. Active means the patient himself do the range of motion. In all dislocations, completely the patient's ROM will be affected, and in the fracture of that particular affected area, that means if there is Colles fracture, then the patient is not able to do the movements of wrist. Such active movements will be affected. And we are also checking the passive movements also. Passive means we are assisting that particular movement to differentiate whether there is complete tear of a fracture, complete tear of supraspinatus muscle. In such conditions, we are doing passive movements. For example, if there is complete tear of supraspinatus muscle, I explain. The patient history is fallen on outstretched hand, and the patient's attitude is patient supports his affected hand with opposite hand, and the patient is not able to do the range of motion immediately after complete tear of supraspinatus muscle. If we are asking the patient to do Dugas test is positive in anterior shoulder dislocation. If we are asking the patient to do Dugas test, that means ask the patient to touch his opposite shoulder. This is Dugas test. And if we are asking the patient to do Dugas test, then the patient is not able to attempt any movements. Dugas test will be positive, but there is no shoulder dislocation. Dugas test will be positive due to immense pain of that particular patient, but that patient does not have anterior shoulder dislocation. This is very important. If we are not undressing the patient, if we are not palpating the patient, if we go for shoulder reduction, Koch's method, then that patient's supraspinatus muscle, if it was a partial tear, it will go to complete. Please note. I explain once more. The patient's history is fall on an outstretched hand. Patient come to OPD with the same attitude of shoulder dislocation, and the patient is not able to attempt any movements. And if the patients, we are checking the Dugas test, that means we ask the patient to touch the opposite shoulder along the right side of chest, but the patient is not able to attempt that particular movement due to severe pain. Before doing inspection and palpation, if we are going for shoulder reduction, then that particular patient's supraspinatus muscle and joint capsule all will be injured. So we should go for inspection. For inspection, undress the patient up to waist. In inspection itself, if there is anterior shoulder dislocation, then we can see flattening of the shoulder. But in supraspinatus injury, there won't be flattening. There will be normal contour in supraspinatus injury. Second thing, the patient's tenderness will be over the anterolateral aspect of shoulder, that means in greater tuberosity where the supraspinatus tendon is attached. We can easily palpate over that particular area and feel the tenderness. And if we are doing that particular movement, patient is not able to do the abduction of the shoulder, but passively with the help of examiner, the examiner abducts the shoulder in this particular position up to this particular position, and then when the patient is doing abduction, a 30-degree abduction, if the examiner removes the hand, the patient's hand will be dropped like this. That particular test is called drop-arm test. In such conditions, in orthopedic trauma conditions, we are doing this passive range of motion. Hope you understood the role of passive ROM. This is a particular fracture. You can use the chat option to tell which bone is fractured, or you can tell the eponym of the fracture. All of us feel free to use the option. I want to explain one thing mainly. Actually, X-ray was invented by William Röntgen in 1895. This Abraham Coley told about this particular fracture as distal and radius fracture in 1806. Before that period, before 1806, it was discussed that this particular deformity is due to wrist dislocation like this. And modern orthopedicians tell, Abraham Coley explained about this particular injury in 1806 before the invention of X-ray. X-ray was invented in 1895. They will tell like that. But please remember, Susruta Samhita was wrote long years before, and in Susruta Samhita, the diagnosis with clinical examination is very well explained, and the clinical features are same. The management protocol, patterns of fracture, rehabilitation, all are well explained in Susruta Samhita. So, I want to tell you only one thing. We should practice this. We should not boast about this. We should practice this. And this particular injury is Colles fracture. And Colles fracture means fracture at the distal end of radius within 2.5 centimeter from the wrist joint with or without avulsion of ulnar styloid process. In 50% cases of Colles fracture, there will be avulsion of ulnar styloid process, and the distal fragment is displaced posteriorly and laterally. Normally, our radial styloid process is 1 centimeter distal to ulnar styloid process, and in Colles fracture, both the styloid process will come to same level. This is a clinical examination tool to diagnose Colles fracture, and surely there will be dinner fork or silver fork deformity also. You can use this particular injury. You can tell about this particular injury in chat box. Actually, this is a supracondylar fracture of humerus. This is a very commonest injury in children. You can see the distal end of humerus is fractured and the distal fragment is posteriorly displaced. Due to this particular fragment, due to the injury of proximal fragment, there is a chance of brachial artery injury. I already explained, and this brachial artery injury may cause Workman's ischemic contracture. It may occur without displacement also. If there is no displacement, then it's possible to manage conservatively. 3 weeks immobilization is only needed. Because it's in children, the fracture healing will occur very early when compared to adults. So that Acharya Susruta also explains like that. In children, the fracture healing is very much better. So that if there is no displacement, only 3 weeks immobilization is needed. But if there is displacement, then it is better to go for a surgical repair. And please note, the distal fragment is displaced posteriorly also. The posterior dislocation of elbow and this supracondylar fracture of humerus, the on inspection, both looks like same. I explain once more. Supracondylar fracture of humerus and posterior elbow dislocation, both on inspection looks like same because the olecranon process is posteriorly displaced in both the conditions. In supracondylar fracture of humerus, along with the distal fragment of humerus, olecranon process is posteriorly displaced. But in posterior dislocation of elbow, the olecranon process along with the head of the radius displaces posteriorly and posterolaterally with respect to lower end of humerus. The olecranon process of ulna along with the head of the radius displaces posteriorly or posterolaterally with respect to lower end of humerus. And it's possible to differentiate both these conditions with the measurement. If we are measuring from angle of acromion, that means the posterior side of acromion process where the spine of scapula becomes acromion process, from the angle of acromion to lateral epicondyle, and from lateral epicondyle to radial stellar process if we are doing the measurement and comparing it with the sound side, with the normal side. In orthopedic setting, it's very important to compare it with the normal side. If we are doing the measurement taken from angle of acromion to lateral epicondyle is shortened in supracondylar fracture of humerus, and the measurement taken from lateral epicondyle to radial stellar process is shortened in posterior dislocation of elbow. I will explain once more. The measurement taken from angle of acromion to lateral epicondyle is shortened in supracondylar fracture of humerus, and the measurement taken from lateral epicondyle to radial stellar process is shortened in posterior dislocation of elbow. With this, we can easily differentiate clinically before going for X-ray whether it's a supracondylar fracture of humerus or posterior dislocation of elbow. In both these conditions, we should check the distal and radial pulse and check whether there is any injury to nerve by asking the patient to do the thumbs up and abduction and adduction of fingers. This should be checked in both these conditions to check whether there is nerve injury. This is very easy. This is lateral and clavicle fracture. This is the most commonest site fracture at the junction of medial 2/3 and lateral 1/3. This is very common injury. And in Susruta Samhita also, Acharya explains, Sannamunnamet Svinnamakshagam Musalenatu Tadonadam Pidecha Badiniyat Gadamevacha. In this particular condition, the medial fragment goes upwards due to the pull of sternocleidomastoid and lateral fragment goes downwards due to the pull of pectoralis major. So that to keep this in position, Susruta Acharya explains Sannam Unnamed and Tadonadam Pidecha. That means the one which is down, it should be kept up, and one which is up, it should be kept down. And then Gadabandha is advised. In almost all conditions, Susruta Acharya explains Samabandha in fracture management, but only in clavicle fracture, Akshakasti Bhakna, Acharya explains Gadabandha. This is a neck of femur fracture. This is intertrochanteric fracture. This is subtrochanteric fracture. These X-rays are to just know about this particular fracture. Coming to the basics of fracture, actually fracture is classified based on etiology into three, that is traumatic, fatigue and pathological. Based on etiology, fracture classification is divided into three, traumatic, fatigue and pathological. And traumatic is divided into two, direct and indirect. This direct means it is due to direct injury. If someone is blowing a stick against us, then our instant movement is to block it, and this particular causes fracture to ulna, and that particular fracture is known as nightstick fracture, which is an example of direct injury. I already explained fall on an outstretched hand. That particular fall on an outstretched hand causes fracture at the junction of medial 2/3 and lateral 1/3 due to this transmitted force, and it's an example of indirect injury. That's traumatic is divided into direct and indirect. I explained both the conditions and examples. And this fatigue fracture or march fracture or stress fracture, this particular fracture is due to repeated strain injury. The most commonest site is fracture at the distal end of second and third metatarsal. That means neck of second and third metatarsal is the most commonest site of fatigue fracture. It is very common in army people and also police. The third one is pathological fracture. Fatigue fracture may also occur to tibia and fibula and also to the neck of femur. If a 45-year-old man repeatedly doing march past, there is a chance of neck of femur hairline fracture, which is a fatigue fracture. I will explain the division of pathological fracture in the very next slide. This is direct and indirect. I already explained this. Due to repeated strain injury, march fracture or stress fracture occur. The management protocol is same as that of traumatic fracture. And one more thing, Acharya Susruta explained about traumatic fracture only. Padana Pidana Prahara Akshebana Vyala Pragadasana Prabhadibhi Abhigada Visheshai Anega Vidamastana Bhakna Mubidishandi. That particular condition, the etiology is only regarding traumatic fracture. And coming to the division of pathological fracture, it is divided into congenital, inflammatory, neoplastic, and insufficiency. And this congenital example is osteogenesis imperfecta. Inflammatory is TB. This is very common in vertebra. Neoplastic CA, which is also common in vertebra. But another common site is proximal 1/3 of humerus and proximal 1/3 of femur. If we are suspecting a fracture of proximal 1/3 of femur and proximal 1/3 of humerus without any severe trauma, then we should suspect a secondary. Insufficiency fracture include osteoporosis and osteomalacia, which is the division of pathological fracture. And this is another classification. The first classification is based on etiology, and the second classification is based in relation with external environment and is divided into open and closed. And closed fracture is simple fracture and open fracture is compound fracture. Regarding closed fracture and open fracture, in explaining about Shaidur Bahulyam, I explains if there is loss of hematoma, due to open wound, then there is a chance of delayed healing. The second thing is, if there is open wound, there is a more chance of infection also. All closed fracture or simple fracture is not possible to manage conservatively with closed manipulative reduction. Some conditions should be referred to an orthopedic surgeon. We should know that particular conditions. Coming to the classification based on patterns of fracture, one is green stick, which is very common in children. Second one is spiral due to twisted injury. A spiral fracture is very common in distal end of fibula and also in metacarpals. And this comminuted fracture, a large number of pieces, small bones may occur. The site of comminuted fracture may differ. One site is patella, other is olecranon process, and there is a chance of vertebra also, there is a chance of comminuted fracture. Transverse fracture, whenever there is a force to the long axis of bone in right angle, there is a chance of transverse fracture. Compound fracture, we already explained that particular fracture is open fracture. And the compression fracture, the commonest site is T12 vertebrae. Another commonest site of compression fracture is calcaneum. Please note, in green stick fracture, there may not be complete fracture. Spiral fracture, I already explained. Comminuted fracture means very small pieces. Transverse fracture occur due to force right angle to the long axis of bone. Compound fracture will be open fracture. Compression fracture, most commonest site is T12. This is the division of green stick, which is not much important. Coming to our classification of fracture, Susruda's classification, it includes Karkadaga, Ashwagarna, Churnida, Pichida, Astichalida, Kandabhagna, Majjanugada, Adipadida, Vakram, Chinnam, Padidam, Sphudidam. This is the classification of fracture explained by Acharya Susruda. I will explain some common examples of Karkadaga Bhagna. We can correlate Karkadaga Bhagna to stellate fracture. And this stellate fracture means the fracture radiates from a one single point to 3 or 4 parts. You can see in this condition, the fracture radiates from a single point to 3 or more areas. And this particular fracture is stellate fracture, which is common in body of scapular fracture or skull fracture. Next one is Ashwagarnam. Ashwagarna is Ashwagarnava Udgadam. It's directly oblique fracture, which may occur at the distal end of humerus. Next one is Churnidam. Sprishyamane Shabdavat Churnidam. In Churnida Bhagna, there will be more grating sensation due to more number of pieces of bones. That is comminuted fracture. One commonest site I explained, it is in patella. Or direct injury to olecranon process may also cause Churnida Bhagna. If there are a very large number of pieces, one management is tension band wiring. If the number of pieces is very small and it's very in quantity, it's very large, then the management protocol is excision. This is regarding Churnida Bhagna. It may also occur in vertebra also. If a small piece may cause spinal cord compression, in that condition also surgical management is needed. It is regarding Churnida. To patella, there may be a chance of injury, direct injury, which may cause undisplaced transverse fracture. It's possible to do conservative management. In that particular patient, the patient is able to do SLR actively. If the patient is able to do SLR actively with fracture of patella, then we can do conservative management. If the patient is not able to do active SLR, that means there is displacement of patella, which requires surgical correction. And another one is comminuted fracture to patella, which requires surgical correction. Next one is Pichidam. Pichidam, Pradudam Gadam Analpashofam Pichidam, which is a compression fracture, which is very common in vertebra, D12 vertebra, then L1 and D11. And also it is common in calcaneum. Astichalidam, Partiorasti Hinodgadam Astichalidam, we can correlate it to avulsion fracture. Avulsion fracture may occur in greater tuberosity fracture due to the pull of Supraspinatus muscle, I already explained that particular condition. Last Friday, I met with one case. It is possible to do management with aeroplane splintage. Second one is fracture of medial malleolus due to the pull of deltoid ligament or medial collateral ligament. In that particular condition, it requires surgical correction. Then next one is fracture of patella due to the pull of quadriceps muscle or quadriceps tendon, which requires surgical correction. In Jones fracture also, the peroneus brevis muscle pulls the proximal end of fifth metatarsal, but it's possible to do conservative management because there is no particular movements in that particular area, so that we can do conservative management in that particular condition. Kandabhagna is transverse fracture directly. It may occur in long bones. Majjanugada is impacted fracture. I explained about Majjanugada Bhagna. Majjanugada Bhagna is impacted fracture in which the distal fragment is pushed into the proximal fragment. The commonest site is neck of femur and neck of humerus. Adipaditam is complete fracture. Vakram is green stick fracture, which is very common in children. Abuknam ayuktam asti vakram, which is very common in children. Today, I met with a green stick fracture of a small child. Next one is Chinnam, incomplete fracture, and Padidam is crack fracture, and Sphudidam is fissured fracture, which can be seen in long bones but rare. In Susruta Samhita, all the patterns of fracture are included. This is, I already explained, stellate fracture or Karkadaga Bhagna. These are the patterns of fracture. This one is normal. This is transverse fracture or Kandabhagna, oblique or Ashwagarna, spiral. Spiral is actually not correlated in Ayurveda. And this comminuted fracture, Churnida Bhagna. Avulsion fracture, Asti Charida. Impacted is Majjanugadam. Fissured fracture is Sphudidam. Green stick fracture is Vakram. This is an example of Pichidam or wedge compression fracture. Compression fracture or Pichida Bhagna may also occur to calcaneum. To check whether there is compression fracture in calcaneum, we are taking this lateral view X-ray, and in lateral view X-ray, we are checking this Bowler's angle. Bowler's angle or tuber joint angle means calcaneum consists of non-articular surface and articular surface. The articulation of calcaneum is with talus, and the angle between articular surface and non-articular surface of calcaneum is normally 20 to 40 degree. And whenever there is compression, then this particular angle is reduced. So we can easily diagnose whether there is compression fracture of calcaneum. This is an example of oblique fracture. This is transverse fracture. Actually, this is spiral fracture. Spiral fracture. Along with the fibular spiral fracture, there is avulsion fracture of medial malleolus also, which requires surgical correction. Coming to the prevention of injury, it requires weight-bearing exercise, calcium supplement, vitamin D3 supplement for reducing osteoporosis and osteomalacia, and then to prevent RTA. And people who participate in sports, there should be appropriate protective gear. And then estrogen therapy for women over the age of 50 is to prevent the fracture due to injuries. This is the parts of a growing bone. This is epiphysis. This is physis, growth plate. All the growth plate injury should be managed properly. If we are not doing proper management to growth plate injury, then there is a chance of lack of length of the affected bone. So this epiphyseal or physeal injury should be managed properly. This particular condition, you can use the chat option to diagnose this particular condition.
Participants can put their views in the chat box. posterior dislocation of shoulder joint.
Actually, this is a normal X-ray of a child. This is the compare X-ray of left. This is right, which I show here. This is the X-ray of left shoulder of same patient. This is a male boy with age 10. Actually, this is a normal X-ray. I show this particular X-ray to advise one thing. If a male patient up to 19 and a female patient up to 16, it is better to go for comparison X-ray views. If one limb is affected, you should prescribe the other limb also to check whether there is actual fracture or whether it's a growth plate. This is a basic regarding X-ray investigation. Actually, 2 limbs, 2 joints, 2 times and 2 views. 2 limbs I already explained to check if a male patient up to 19 and a female patient up to 16. 2 joints means the proximal joint and distal joint of a particular injury. If forearm is affected, then after clinical examination, not in all conditions, after clinical examination, if you are suspecting injury, then go for proximal and distal joint. In that particular area, there is a particular injury called Essex Lopresti fracture. In that particular condition, to diagnose Essex Lopresti fracture in which the proximal and distal ends are affected, then in that particular condition, we should take the proximal and distal joint, elbow joint and wrist joint, or we should include that particular joints in one X-ray itself. This is regarding 2 joints, and 2 times means before reduction and after reduction, and 2 views is very important in radius and ulna, tibia and fibula to check whether there is fracture or not. Otherwise, we may miss that particular fracture. This is another example to take bilateral X-ray view. Here, this is a subluxation of acromioclavicular joint, which was occurred to a male patient with 25-year-old age who done ice skating in a mall. He came to OPD with pain over acromioclavicular joint, and on inspection itself, it's possible to diagnose because there will be a lump in acromioclavicular joint. To check whether there is actual acromioclavicular joint subluxation, then we should go for bilateral X-ray. Here you can see this is normal acromioclavicular joint, right? And here there is subluxation. To check whether there is acromioclavicular joint subluxation also, we are advising 2 limbs. This I already explained this. 2 joints means proximal and distal joints. This is regarding Essex Lopresti fracture in which there is fracture of head of the radius and also the distal radio-ulnar joint is subluxated. To know this particular injury, to check whether there is distal radio-ulnar joint subluxation, we should go for 2 joint X-ray, proximal and distal joint X-ray. 2 times means before reduction and after reduction, and also in some conditions like scaphoid fracture, in which if we are advising X-ray initially, we can't diagnose the X-ray. We can diagnose the fracture in X-ray. In that particular condition, we are taking a check X-ray after 10 days, but we should do the bandage. This is important. In Adams clinical orthopedics test, it is written like this. The patient should return to OPD after 10 days to take check X-ray so that we should do the bandage. Then the patient come to OPD to take the check X-ray. So that it is very important. Check X-ray should be taken after 10 days. Up to 10 days, there should be bandage in glass holding position in scaphoid fracture. If we are suspecting scaphoid fracture, we are keeping the position in glass holding position like this, and the patient should be in bandage. To check whether there is scaphoid fracture, the tenderness will be in anatomical snuff box here, and also there will be tenderness in the scaphoid tubercle also. if we are suspecting this particular fracture, in the initial X-ray, if there is no fracture, in that condition also, you should take X-ray after 10 days and do the bandage in glass holding position. And after 10 days, if there is no fracture, you can do the removal of bandage. And if there is fracture, continue the bandage. Tube views is taken at 90 degree to each other, AP and lateral, which is very much useful in areas where are two bones. Important point before radiological investigation is clinical examination should be must before advice to two things, one for professional diagnosis and second thing to avoid unnecessary views. You should take only necessary views so that clinical examination is very much important. If needed, bilateral X-ray should be advised in the beginning itself. Please note, in the beginning itself. If you advise an X-ray to a particular patient with right-sided injury, and if we are confused it with a growth plate, then in the beginning itself, before prescribing X-ray, we should go for bilateral. And according to conditions, special views should be advised. I will explain the special views. And never advise a view if it's not needed. And special views in scaphoid, listhesis, and cervical oblique view can be taken. And some other special views are also there. I will explain that particular views. In calcaneum, axial view is taken. In patella, sky view is taken. In posterior dislocation of shoulder, Y view or transscapular view is taken. In posterior dislocation of shoulder, we are advising Y view or transscapular view. In patella, we can go for skyline view. And also in hip, to check in posterior dislocation of hip, to check whether there is acetabular injury, we are taking a special view called Judet view. And in calcaneum, we are advising axial view. And these are the special views of X-ray we are using in orthopedic trauma setting. And the complications we can divide into general, local. Local is divided into recent and late, and then joint complications. We should know about these complications. One is shock and fat embolism, which is fatal. In some conditions, there will be fracture fever, which is not common in all. And the local is divided into recent and late. And the recent complications mainly include injury to blood vessels and nerve. I already explained about brachial artery injury. A nerve injury, most common conditions are actually very small injury like neuropraxia, which is reversible in 2 to 4 weeks. And late complications include delayed union, non-union, and malunion. Avascular necrosis may occur. Post-traumatic ossification or myositis ossificans, which is very common in elbow joint and hip joint. And the joint complications include adhesion or stiffness, myositis ossificans, osteoarthritis, pseudous dystrophy. Such conditions may occur as complications. We should know about the prognosis, our limitations, and our prospects. Avulsion fracture, femur shaft and neck fracture, both bone forearm fracture above 18, fracture associated with dislocation. In such conditions, we should not attempt reduction. Comminuted fracture and open fracture, it is better to go for further management or surgical advice. And the basic management principles of fracture include reduce, hold, and move. Reduce means reduction, which is not needed in all conditions. Hold means immobilization, which is not needed in all conditions, but movement or rehabilitation, which is needed in almost all conditions. Rehabilitation is explained by Acharya Susruta in Hastadala Bhagna. He asked to do Mritpinda, Lavanapinda, and Pashanapinda Dharana. And in Kurpara Sandhi Vislesha, Kaurpuram Tutada Sandhi Angushtena Anumarjed, Anumrjya Tada Sandhi Pidayet Kurparachudam, Prasarana Agunjane Chegam, Sneha Segam Chadabed. That Sneha Segam is advised after immobilization to do rehabilitation. And the third example is in temporomandibular joint dislocation. In Hanusandhi Vislesha, Acharya Susruta explained Nasya to give strength to that particular muscles. These are the examples of rehabilitation explained by Acharya Susruta. We should learn about rehabilitation. Orthopedic rehabilitation is a our most important area of scope of practice, and we should learn rehabilitation properly. The reduction includes traction, counter traction, and correction. Ada avanadam unnamir, unnadam chavapidair, anjair adishiptam, adogadam cha ubirivartir. This is the method of reduction explained by Acharya Susruta. It includes traction, counter traction, and correction. Correction just opposite to the deformity. Reduction is not needed in all conditions, but the reduction should be very much gentle, and in such conditions, that means in shoulder dislocation, posterior elbow dislocation, patellar subluxation, in such conditions, or in Colles fracture, the reduction should be very much gentle, and there will be specific reduction methods also. In temporomandibular joint dislocation, that technique is important, not power is important. That particular technique which are highly specific, and it should be gentle. Coming to immobilization, we can do external splindage, internal splindage, and continuous traction. Continuous traction is a method of immobilization which we are following in femur fracture and tibia fracture. Conservatively, we are doing external splindage. I am using aluminum splindage, which is more functionally useful. Internal splindage and continuous traction more commonly in neck of femur fracture we are doing it conservatively, but in shaft to femur fracture skeletal traction is given, which is done by orthopedicians. And the modalities include bandage, splints, POP slabs, POP cast, internal fixation, and specific regional orthosis. The knowledge of orthosis can be incorporated in our practice, which is very much useful in some conditions. Actually, I am using a POP slab with splindage. That means in posterior aspect, I am using POP slab, and also in anterior aspect, I am doing a splint. I will explain once more. In Colles fracture, I am doing slab in the posterior aspect from elbow to the metacarpophalangeal joint. Posteriorly, I am using a slab, POP slab, and anteriorly, I am using aluminum splint. With this particular area where there is aluminum splint, we can use Murivanna in between, pour Murivanna in between to reduce the soft tissue injury, soft tissue swelling, Pitta Rakta Koba in the initial phase. And this POP slab gives ample support, and we can reduce the period of immobilization, and also we can reduce the frequency of bandaging also. Bandage, all of us know the importance of Bandha explained by Acharya Susruta in 18th chapter, that's Koshadama, Swastika, Anuvelida, Pradoli, Mandala, Stagiga, Yamaga, Katwa, China, Vibandha, Vidana, Gofana, Panjagi. That particular knowledge of bandaging helps us very much in the management of trauma. Okay. Coming to rehabilitation, the last one after immobilization. We should know the period of immobilization in each conditions. For clavicle fracture, the period of immobilization should be up to 4 weeks. In all dislocations, the period of immobilization should be 3 weeks. In Colles fracture, the ideal period is 6 weeks. But whenever there is absence of tenderness means there is callus formation. In that particular condition, we can remove the bandage and start rehabilitation. And whenever there is absence of tenderness, along with absence of pain in weight bearing in lower limb injuries, we can start rehabilitation. This is a basic rule regarding when to remove bandage. The rehabilitation principle includes active use and exercise. First one is active use and exercise. Second one is active use and exercise against resistance. And the third one is active use and exercise with weight bearing. The same principle which Acharya Susruta explains, Mritpinda Dharanam, which is very soft, active use and exercise, and Levanapinda Dharanam, which resists that particular movement, that is active use and exercise against resistance, and then Pashana Pinda Dharanam, which is weight bearing, which is for active use and exercise with weight bearing. This is the basic principle of rehabilitation. To know the rehabilitation of a particular joint, it is only the active use and movements of that particular joint. It is nothing other than active use and movements of that particular joint. And second one, all these movements against resistance. And the third one, all these movements with weight bearing. This is explained by Acharya Susruta also. And this is the basic protocol to be followed regarding rehabilitation. Also, we can use Ubanaha if there is swelling after immobilization. After immobilization, if there is swelling, we can go with Nagaradi, Leba or Ubanaha. Second thing is Dara. For Dara, after period of immobilization, don't go for Murivanna. Murivanna is for acute injury, acute trauma setting. To reduce the Pittarakta Koba occurred due to that particular injury, you should use Ashavanna or Ayavanna of Shandigiri for reducing the stiffness affected due to immobilization. The second one is Dara, which can be done with Ashavanna, which is very much useful. And the third one is Vyayama, that is active use and exercise itself. This is the rehabilitation which we can incorporate as part of our area, that is Ubanaha and Dara, which is very much effective. By this basic management protocol, I am concluding this class. In this class, I explained about the first one, how to diagnose a fracture with history, inspection, palpation, range of motion, and I added attitude also. And the second thing, always compare the affected limb with normal limb. This is a basic thing regarding orthopedics. And I explained about X-ray, what all things to be know before advising or prescribing X-ray. And the third one is basic management principles, which include reduce, hold, and move. This is the basic management principles. And in this, the most important one is rehabilitation principle. Okay. Thank you. Thank you very much, organizers, for the opportunity. Thank you.
Thank you, Doctor. Now moving to the, before moving to the question answer session, there is a special announcement from Diksha team. We are organizing a lecture series called Vyavahara Siddhi, an expertise lecture series on legal and statutory guidelines for Ayurvedic professionals and upcoming entrepreneurs. Those who want to register can please follow the link. It will be provided in the chat box. Now moving to the discussion session. Participants who have a question, please put their questions in the chat box and we can have a discussion with sir. Any questions, participants? So there is one question, how to manage pain?
Okay, it's a good question. Definitely, all of us can ask any doubt regarding this. Regarding pain management, in orthopedic OP setting, our clinical diagnosis is very much important. We should diagnose this particular condition, to which dhatu it's affected. If this particular injury can be affected to skin or to tendon or to ligament or to muscle or to bone, to which part injury is affected, that should be diagnosed first. And if it's a bony injury, then the management of that particular condition is price. Price means, if in acute injury, in all injury management, our protocol is price. First one is prevention or protection. Then R means rest. I for ice packing. Ice packing should be done for a period of 10 minutes with a proper coverage with a towel. Don't apply directly. And with this proper package with a towel, we can apply ice for a period of 10 minutes. And then after 1 hour, we can continue this. And next is compression, that means bandage. And last one is elevation. This is the basic management protocol explained by modern people. And coming to Ayurveda, our protocol is bandage, immobilization with Murivanna. This is the most important thing to reduce pain. Bandage with application of Murivanna. Don't do massage. Don't do massage. Don't go for hot application. You should simply immobilize the condition with Murivanna. Then that pain will be subsided. No painkiller should be advised. Orthopedicians are avoiding painkiller, NSAIDs, because it reduces the healing. So that they are not advising NSAIDs. Don't go for NSAIDs. If it's an upper limb injury from the sternoclavicular joint to the distal end, you should apply a sling to elevate. If it's a lower limb injury, elevation should be done with the help of a pillow, 2 or 3 pillow. Elevation should be done and proper immobilization. If there is displacement to fracture or displacement to joint, then the first line is to do the reduction properly. Immediately after the reduction, pain will be subsided. First thing, you should know the prognosis. Before attempting reduction, you should know the prognosis, whether it's possible to manage or not. If there is fracture associated with dislocation, you should not attempt reduction. Actually, it causes a medical legal case. You should not go for reduction. That patient should be referred to an orthopedic surgeon if there is fracture associated with dislocation. If there is no fracture, confirmed by taking radiological investigation, definitely you can attempt the reduction. If you know the reduction, immediately after the reduction, pain will be subsided. No need of any medicine. And after reduction, you should do the bandage for a period of 3 weeks if it's a dislocation for the healing of joint capsule to avoid recurrent dislocation. And if it's a Colles fracture, immediately after the reduction, you should do the immobilization either with a POP cast or with a splindage. For that, if you are using splints, 4 splints should be advised: anterior surface, posterior surface, and 2 on the lateral surface. And after this splinted bandage itself, patient's pain will be subsided. And we can do internally Laksha Gugulu or Abha Gugulu, or you can give internally Gandhadaila. Gandhadaila should be given after a period, not in the initial phase. And we can give these particular internal medicines for better healing. And the Prayoga of Laksha, Maduga, and Leshuna, this with Palkashaya, after 3 weeks, it also helps in the healing of fracture. And the pain can be managed very easily if your diagnosis is specific and also if your management is specific. Okay.
Thank you so much, sir. Next question. How can we manage hairline fractures? 1 second, sir.
1 minute. One
Yes,
minute.
sir. Yes, sir.
Actually, it's possible to do easily management for hairline fracture. In hairline fracture, mainly in radiological investigation, initially, there may be no fracture finding if it's a hairline fracture. Clinically, it's possible to diagnose with spring test or axial pull test. And the second thing, after a period of 3 weeks, if you are taking an X-ray, we can see the callus formation at the fracture site. In that particular condition also, our management protocol is same. It's immobilization itself, but the fracture will heal early when compared to other fractures. This is regarding the management protocol of hairline fracture.
Thank you so much, sir. Next question is by Dr. Atira. So can you please tell Ayurvedic management for L1 compression fracture in a 58-year-old woman?
Okay, this is a good question. Actually, this is a very common condition. Actually, this L1 compression fracture is due to flexion injury. Spinal injuries are actually divided into 7. The first one is flexion injury, and flexion injury is the most commonest one. Due to that particular flexion injury, the most commonest site of fracture is T12, and then the second commonest site is L1. And immediately after the injury, if a patient fall on sitting position, if it's an old lady, mainly there will be a chance of flexion injury which causes compression fracture. Immediately after the injury, we can diagnose it clinically itself. If we are tapping on the spinous process like this, the patient will not be able to bear pain. It happens immediately after the injury. And on X-ray, lateral view X-ray, it's possible to diagnose wedge compression fracture. And initially, our management protocol is immobilization with Vibandha Bandha. Vibandha Bandha, Prashta Udara Varasu, Vibandha. And with Vibandha Bandha, we are doing the bandage, 3 circular turns with a Cora cloth of 30 centimeter length, 30 centimeter width and 5 meter length. And I think in this presentation, I will show the Vibandha Bandha. And with this Vibandha Bandha, we are doing the bandage up to pain relief. 3 to 4 weeks immobilization is needed. And another thing is, as part of pain management, it is better to go for Matravasti, which is explained by Acharya Susruta in Kadi Bhagna. Acharya Susruta explains for Matravasti or Snehavasti, which is very effective in the pain management. And also after a period of immobilization, after complete pain relief, it is better to go for rehabilitation. Very simple rehabilitation techniques. First start with abdominal bracing, that means without movement, and then go for other movement exercises, rehabilitation. This is regarding the management. And if a patient come to OPD after 3 weeks, after 3 months or after 2 months, in that condition, you should not do the bandage. In that condition, you should not do the bandage and you should do rehabilitation only in that particular condition. In that condition also, patient complaint of pain, but don't go for bandage, you should do the rehabilitation. This is actually Vibandha Bandha. I will show the Vibandha Bandha. It can be done in rib fracture and also in T12 fracture and L1 fracture. This is a Cora cloth with 30 centimeter width and 6 meter length. This, if it's a L1 fracture, this part should be applied on the spine. Like 3 turns are taken like this. And at last, the turn should be taken around the cervical area. This is actually Vibandha Bandha. If we are not taking this particular turn, then it's a Mandala Bandha. But in this condition, you should definitely do a Vibandha Bandha. And please ensure the patient should sit straight while you are tying this. Most of the patients look down what is happening here on this tying. And then if you are tying that in that particular condition, after 2-3 days, patient again come to OPD due to cervical pain, due to the cervical flexion. So please ensure the patient's face should be looking forward while you are doing this particular bandage. Okay.
Thank you, sir. Moving to the next question. What are the other references for Bhagna other than Sushruta Samhita?
Actually, Sushruta Samhita explains the detailed explanation regarding fracture. But in Vagbhata Samhita, in Ashtanga Hridaya and Sangraha also, we can see the explanation of fracture. And also, Vagbhata is explaining a particular bandage called Ulsangi Bandha. And this particular Ulsangi Bandha is triangular bandage or sling, which is very effective in the management of upper limb injuries. It's only explained by Acharya Vagbhata. And Madhava Nidhana explained Savarana Bhagna and Avarana Bhagna. And the Savarana Bhagna and Avarana Bhagna is closed fracture and open fracture. Savarana Bhagna is open fracture and Avarana Bhagna is closed fracture.
Thank you, sir.
Now also one more thing to add, in Chakradatta, this Laksha Gugulu and Abha Gugulu is explained in Chakradatta Bhagna Adhikara. And I already explained the Prayoga of Laksha, Madhuga and Leshuna, which is also seen in Chakradatta, which is very effective in non-union and delayed union fractures and to fracture occurring to coccyx. Which these yogas are explained in Chakradatta.
Okay, thank you, sir. Next question. Sir, are Ayurvedic surgeons allowed to do splintage and plaster cast?
Why not? Yes. Actually, any method of immobilization can be adopted by Ayurvedic people. Actually, I am using this POP cast for last 5 years. It's possible to do. My mentor Matthew Wembley sir is doing this POP cast for, I think, for more than 20 years. It is possible to do this particular immobilization. You can opt any immobilization techniques as per your convenience, and it should be patient friendly. So that I explained about regional orthosis, that orthosis can also be used as per the convenience of patient. For this particular Vibandha Bandha, you can use a particular orthosis if needed. And for or shoulder, instead of immobilization, instead of bandage, this shoulder spica, you can opt shoulder immobilizer. Likewise, you can use any orthosis as per your and patient's convenience, no problem.
Thank you, sir. ACL injury management in Ayurveda.
Okay. First, you should diagnose whether it's a partial tear or complete tear clinically. Clinical diagnosis is very important than MRI investigation. Actually, the confirmation of MRI investigation in knee joint is almost 67%. So that the clinical diagnosis is important. Don't go for MRI immediately after the injury. It may cause false interpretation due to enormous swelling, due to the hematoma formation. So definitely, if a patient comes to OPD with a knee joint injury, our first aim is to diagnose the condition, which may not be possible in the first setting. If the patient is coming immediately after the injury, then it is very difficult to diagnose the condition, so that you ask the history of the injury. This ACL tear is very common in hyperextension injuries. So you should definitely ask the history, and the initial management should be immobilization. In knee joint, actually I am doing half cast POP cast from thigh up to the metatarsophalangeal joint. And in that particular condition, actually this is done in Z shape. That means 30-degree flexion of knee and 90-degree flexion of ankle. In that particular position, immobilization is done. And on the first review or second review, you can easily do the diagnosis. The patient is able to do flexion up to 90 degree. And you can first do Lachman's test. Lachman's test is done in 120-degree flexion. Lachman's test fix the femur and then pull the tibia anteriorly. I have some videos of posterior Lachman's test and Droy's test, but this is not in this particular presentation. In patients itself, there is positive anterior Droyer test and positive Lachman's test. And this anterior Droyer test is done similarly, but the patient's knee is flexed to 90 degree and fix the foot, and the hamstring should be kept free. You should check whether the patient's hamstring is tight or not. And then we are anteriorly pulling the tibia, in which anterior Droyer test will be positive. But Lachman's test is more confirmatory than Droyer test. And after the clinical examination, if there is only 5 mm movement, 0.5 centimeter anterior translation means partial tear. 1 centimeter or 10 mm anterior translation means complete tear. If we are suspecting a complete tear, if the patient needs to continue sports activities, then that particular patient should be referred to an orthopedic surgeon. If it's a partial tear, then it's possible to do conservative management, immobilize the patient up to 3 or 4 weeks, up to complete pain relief, and then advise specific rehabilitation techniques like quadriceps strengthening exercise, pillow skews, straight leg raising, chair march. Such exercise should be advised. Then weight bearing exercise should be advised. And after a period of rehabilitation, then ask the patient to do all routine activities. It is very easy to manage partial tear. I am also managing partial tear of sports injuries. If the patient is able to do the sports activities, even after our proper rehabilitation, patient is easily possible to do all the sports activities. But if it's a complete tear and the patient is needed to continue sports, then that patient should be referred. If the patient need not continue sports and it's reluctant to surgery, then if it's a complete tear also, it's possible to manage, but with very great care. That means if the patient is obese or if the patient is repeatedly doing twisting movements of femur and tibia, such cases, it's not possible to do conservative management. If the patient is ready to do the rehabilitation, then we can take up that case. First thing is to diagnose whether it's partial or complete clinically, and then radiologically with MRI, then opt the management protocol. Our aim is to do the immobilization up to pain relief. That means from a period of 3 weeks to 6 or 7 weeks, and then rehabilitation with proper techniques. That means it should be started with isometric exercise, and then with resistance exercise with band, and then with weight bearing exercise. Okay.
Thank you, sir. In compression fracture of L1 and T12, Marmani or ND Corley LEPA can be done?
It can be done, but first you should go for immobilization.
Okay, sir. Any course into in Bagna to learn, sir? Heard that in Kerala it is specially practiced.
Actually, now there is not such courses. Earlier there were such courses conducted by Ayurveda Medical Association of India. Hope eminent senior orthopedicians of Ayurvedic sector will start such classes, and then there is a chance to learn.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you so much, sir, for answering all the questions so patiently. Any more questions, participants? Any more questions from participants? Okay, sir, I think that is for the questions. So can we conclude, sir?
Okay.
Thank you so much, sir, for your excellent class and wonderful sessions and so patiently answering all the questions. Before concluding, I would like to remind once again the participants the Vyavahara Siddhi lecture series. Vyavahara Siddhi, an expertise lecture series on legal and statutory guidelines for Ayurvedic professionals and upcoming entrepreneurs, conducted by Diksha e-Learning. For registration, the links are provided in the chat box. Thank you, sir, for sharing your knowledge with us. It was a great honor listening to you. The influence of a good teacher can never be erased. Every ending is followed by a new beginning. With that being said, keep connected with us on all our social medias of Diksha e-Learning as we are planning more such webinars. Thank you, Doctor, for your sharing your valuable time with us and enlightening us with your knowledge. Thank you all. Have a good evening ahead. Thank you and good night.